So, Shishir, MIT class of 2000, course 18 and 6, and I know we have some Harvard people here, so that is mathematics and computer science for all of you. His first successful business was actually an MIT 50K semifinalist. He came in second, but really it's first because the company that came in first didn't actually ever form a business. So that was Centrata, which he sold off, and then went on to, after a stint in Microsoft, which we won't talk about, you went on to YouTube. And probably one of his greatest accomplishments in life is he's responsible for the button that lets you skip ads. So thank you very much for that. That's incredible. So yeah, going into that world of YouTube, we'll take a little bit, go through your history. This is your life, sort of thing. But back in YouTube days, one of your early talks, you were talking about how at the time you're saying, well, YouTube is going to do for television and broadcast what cable did, where you went from 3 channels to 300, but you were going to go from 300 to 3 million channels, and people laughed at you that is impossible. But then later on, you were talking about, after that came to pass, it was true, you were talking about how we were doing the same thing for software at Coda, where you're going from a handful of applications to hundreds of applications to now millions of applications. So along the lines, now you're talking about 3 phases of productivity, where you talk about, we're now in the 3rd phase of productivity, and that's AI. So could you talk to us a little bit about that and how that relates and where we're going?
What a great intro, by the way. And it's fun to be known for a skip button, which doesn't seem like the thing you want to be especially known for, but it's worked quite well. And I do think those last 2 sets of 3 worked out well. What happened with YouTube, what happened with Coda. I think with productivity, the way we like to think about it is we think we're in this 3rd phase. The first phase was digitization. So we went from typewriters to word processors. The 2nd phase was about collaboration. That's when the web came into productivity. You knew you were in a 2nd-generation productivity tool because the avatars appeared. We were working with people, and all your teammates appeared right at the top. And the 3rd phase is obviously moving towards AI. And in this case, we're now moving from working with people, the avatars are people, to working with virtual people. Sometimes we like to call them agents. Sometimes we like to call that AI. But the idea is that all of a sudden, our workers, our collaborators, are no longer just humans. They're entities that act a lot like humans and can work right alongside us.
Let's shake it up a little bit. Let's go into some quick fire questions, all right? So what word would you use to describe AI in 2025?
Energizing.
Energizing, nice. A non-obvious product that you think is brilliantly designed?
Oh, we talked about this earlier. My favorite one, very non-obvious, my pen. Anyone here know friction pens? So friction is a type of pen. It's a regular pen, but it's erasable, so you turn around, you can erase it. It erases with heat. It's something I can't imagine going through college without. Can't believe we didn't have it when we were at MIT.
Awesome. If you had to pick a new MIT course to teach, what would it be called?
Which department? I think the most obvious one for me is the topic I'm most obsessed with is the topic of rituals, or rituals of great teams, which I guess would be course 15, but I have to think about the right ones for 6 and 18.
Yeah, exactly. A human skill AI will or should never replace?
I think there's a lot that come to mind. The 2 that top of mind are judgment and love. And I think both are ones where I think AI is quite good at being rational. I think it's quite bad at being irrational. But what makes us human is our irrationalities. Being able to judge, being able to love, I think are right at the edge of what I expect AI will ever do.
Nice. And then a favorite book that shaped how you think?
My favorite book by far, if I could name 5 favorite books, it would take 2 spots. It's a book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, the Heath brothers. It's how to change when change is hard. Highly recommended. I refer to it many, many times.
Awesome. you have a very MIT way of thinking about problems, not just MIT, but a very sort of math computer science, which is something you call, searching for the eigenproblem, or the problem that's sort of the fundamental problem that if you answers all the subsequent questions you might ask about a topic. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then specifically, when you were at YouTube, you talked about an eigenproblem, which was, should YouTube allow content to link out or not? And you had sort of formulated that into a different problem. And so, if you could talk a little bit about that, and then what is the eigenproblem that drove the decision to merge Grammarly, Coda, and now Superhuman?
Okay, sure. So eigenquestions first. So eigenquestion, it's a geeky word for most audiences. I hesitate to explain it, but for this audience, it comes right out of 1806. The eigenquestion is very similar to an eigenvector. It's the most discriminating question in a question space. So the way to think about it is you're often faced with a set of questions to go answer. You'll order them by whatever, however they were asked, or maybe by criticality or by urgency. But actually, there's often question number 6 in a list of 10. If you answer that question, it answers all the other questions. So that's an eigenquestion. The term was coined while I was at YouTube because of a decision we had to make, as Wes said, about linking out content. So at the time, people used to come to YouTube. They would search for lots of different things. YouTube was then and is now still the second biggest search engine on the planet. And one of the most common searches we got was for a show called Modern Family. We didn't have Modern Family on YouTube. And there was this big debate about whether we should link out elsewhere. That debate went circles and circles and circles. And one day we reframed that debate and said, what is more likely to happen with the online video market? If you could look at 1 decade, what's more likely to happen? Is it more likely to be about consistency or about comprehensiveness? If it's about comprehensiveness, then you need to have all content available through one place. If it's about consistency, then you don't really need to do that. You just need to do a good job of the content you have and do a really good job of that. We decided it was about consistency, not comprehensiveness. I think we were right. Online video has got obviously much, much larger now. There's no one property that is comprehensive of all of online video. You go to each different destination differently. So that's the concept of an eigenquestion. It was a non-obvious question way down our list that when we came to that decision, we also decided we're not going to link out. YouTube still doesn't link out. If you search for something they don't have, they don't tell you where else to go. You can go somewhere else to figure that out. So that's the concept. You want to talk about that with Grammarly?
Yeah, and so, Grammarly acquired Coda, which was a business you had founded, were CEO of it. They made you CEO of Grammarly, and not too long afterwards, you acquired Superhuman.
Yeah.
You have a vision that has an eigenquestion, I'm sure, sitting under that's driven it. What is that?
Yeah, I think the question that we spend the most time thinking about and is most driving our decisions, we call it the assist, chat, do question. And it's basically the frame of, is AI going to be interruptive or is it going to be immersive? You have to think about that frame, the assist, chat, do. So think about all the different AI providers out there. The one that is sort of cemented in our heads what AI means is the chat product. That's ChatGPT, one of the fastest growing products in human history. Amazing product that many people use every day, sometimes dozens of times a day. There's a set of folks whose view is that AI isn't going to stop there. It's going to go to what we call the do space, which is taking headless tasks, autonomously completing them on our behalf. There's many people with that viewpoint that that's where AI is headed. We heard a little bit from Aparna, from Amjad, and so on, talking a little bit about agents that can do autonomous tasks. And I think it's a really interesting category of AI. We think there's something more fundamental than that. We call that assist, which is where AI comes to you. And that's how we look at it at Grammarly. I think a lot of people misunderstand what Grammarly is doing. We think of Grammarly as the OG agent. It's the one that Grammarly's now 16 years old. For the last 16 years, Grammarly has come to tens of millions of people and helped them do what they do right where they work. It's invisible, it's immersive, it's something that brings AI right to you. Actually, the core technology of Grammarly has very little to do with grammar. It has to do with how to inject AI into your application. So we work in about 1 million different applications. Every website, every desktop application, mobile application, so on. We read your screen, we figure out how to annotate it in a way that's unobtrusive to you, and then we make changes on your behalf. just to give you one fun stat, Grammarly does something like 100 billion LLM calls a week. As if you were to measure us versus other AI providers, we would be probably top 3. But the way we do it is very different. So like I said, if you were in chat or do, if you got a dozen queries a day, that would be a lot. We do a few thousand queries a day per user. Because we are constantly, every time you type a character, every time you load a new application, we're right there trying to figure out what can we do on your behalf. So this spectrum has been the most important deciding factor in how we approach the products we're building now. We believe that AI is going to be immersive, not interruptive.
We'll get back to that in a little bit, but going back to that sort of statement you made, which was crazy back in 2009, that there would be 3 million TV channels effectively of YouTube. What is something that you would say today is, people would say, oh, that's absurd, but it'll be obvious in hindsight about AI?
The one that comes to mind is I think we're going to stop using the term AI. And I know that maybe sounds a little silly, but maybe I'll tell a little story. So I got to college 96 and called my dad and I said I got a Europe at the MIT AI lab, and my dad's a computer science professor, and he sort of groaned and said, don't do that. And I said, why not? And he said, oh, AI, the AI lab, that's where all the stuff that doesn't work goes. And he kind of explained to me how to think about it. And he was kind of right, that the moment anything worked, we took it for granted and we stopped calling it AI. And he had all these examples for me. And he said, when you pull up to a traffic light, it knows when to turn red or green, and it does it depending on whether there's cars there. At one point, that was a really, really hard AI problem. Nowadays, we call it sensors. Doesn't really seem that hard a problem anymore. And there's many such problems where the more commonplace it becomes, the less we think it's AI. So I think one of the reasons we're so excited about AI, and have a whole conference about it, I don't know what they're going to call it when this comes true, is because we're right at the edge of what we understand. It's right at the edge of what we can describe how it works. I think the more it becomes, it's sort of related to what we were talking about, the more it becomes invisible, the more it becomes commonplace, I think we're going to stop calling that AI. So.
Very cool. Outside of work, you have spent years supporting your daughters with their Lego robotics competitions, and as I understand it, 4 global championships.
They qualified for world championships
World
4 out of 7
champions,
times.
4 times. Wow, unbelievable. And by the way, you must be doing something right, because I'm noticing your daughter's actually paying attention to everything. It was in the audience, one of your daughters. So congratulations on that. But that seems to be, as also as a dad, spending that time working with them on those skills says something to me about what you think is going to be the types of important skills for the future, for the world that they're going into. And I want to talk a little bit about, what you think, given where you see AI going and what Grammarly's doing, the students that are coming through, what skills they should be learning to prepare themselves for this world, and what types of careers, jobs they'd be going into.
Yeah, obviously a relevant question as a parent. It's also a relevant question for Grammarly. Grammarly, about a third of our audience is students, so we spend a lot of time thinking and working with schools and educators on how AI impacts the life of students and where they should be headed. My older daughter's a sophomore in college right now, and she's deciding between being a CS and a math major, sort of like I did. And at one point she was asking me, she said, maybe I shouldn't do the CS thing because it seems like AI is going to take all the coding jobs. And I suggested that was the wrong way to think about it. I think there's a different way to think about the impact AI is going to have on all these young students. I think they're going to start their jobs as managers. And I think it's a different frame. Used to be you came in as an individual contributor developer, you were handed a set of tasks, you wrote code. Now it's going to feel a little bit differently. You're going to come in, and all of a sudden you're going to be handed a team. And it's going to be this kind of interesting team, this team of, we like to use the term agents, this team of agents that has read every book on the planet, knows every programming language on the planet, can read your code base pretty quickly. This team of agents can work overnight, 24 hours a day. This team of agents can somehow work with each other, but they lack a lot of things. They lack instruction on what to go do. They collaborate well, but they never fight with each other. There's no creative tension in that set. And that's your job. Your job is going to be to organize and lead this group of new virtual workers. And I think that way of framing it, I think, makes it a little bit easier to think about what's coming for that group. And you prepare differently. Like if you're gonna prepare for a role as a manager, you should do more and more things that put you in the role of being a team leader, being a manager yourself. You should focus your attention on how to frame the right problems. So sort of we were talking about with Icon questions, because it's going to turn out that your judgment, your ability to tell where to focus is actually the thing that's going to matter in this job. And of course, you should be tool forward. You should understand and use every tool. I mean, one of my pet peeves is schools that are preventing kids from using AI. I think they're really not preparing them for the workplace. And just to be clear, I think when calculators came out, there was a similar viewpoint of calculators are going to ruin math. That's not at all what happened. We still teach people how to multiply. That's still a good thing. But let the kids learn to use a calculator, because they have to be able to use every tool to be able to do their job well. But I think we're headed to a world where those students are going to be handed into the workforce a level above where all of us started. And I think that's really interesting, challenging, and inspiring.
Awesome. It's great to actually hear someone talk about the future of work and actually be talking about the future instead of the present of work, which is what a lot of the conversations end up going into. And that's a positive future to look forward to. So ending on a somewhat maybe controversial note, but hopefully a positive one, you've got some of the AI leaders out there like Sam Altman, believe that he's going to kill all the SaaS businesses, including like the Grammarlys, the Codas, and the Superhumans, right? And that they're going to build this sort of walled garden, and there'll be a couple big walled gardens that everyone will live inside them using their agents and their apps. You obviously have a very different take on that, and you're building in the face of all of that capital and all of that intensity. What's your view of how this is going to play out, and how do you answer that?
I mean, I think from an AI perspective, obviously, our goal at Grammarly is we work everywhere the user works. So I think we'll adjust as users work in different places. I think the application that Sam uses a lot as an example that I probably disagree with the most is what's the future of Salesforce? What's the future of CRM? And I think the frame on that is a little backwards. I mean, there's sort of a viewpoint that why bother with a CRM? We're just going to have this set of AI agents that can answer all our questions. But I might think about it a little bit differently. So anybody who's ever seen or run a Salesforce would say when you have one salesperson, you don't need a CRM. You just take notes in your notebook. When you have 5, you go write something on a whiteboard. When you have 10, you get a spreadsheet. When you have 100, you need a CRM system. You need a way to be able to track the work they're doing. You need a way to see the different patterns. You need a way to assign territories, to assign different leads. The more salespeople you have, the more you need software to manage them. And I think that's what'll happen as we go from having 10 salespeople to having hundreds of virtual salespeople. You actually need more software to manage them. I'll pick a different industry where I think this played out was advertising. So for a long time, I spent a lot of time working on a large ad product at YouTube. In that space, the old days of advertising were, you've probably seen it on Mad Men, you would create one ad every year, and that one ad ran everywhere. And then all of a sudden, digital advertising started, and not only could you run many ads, you could tailor every ad to every individual person, and we had advertisers that would run millions of unique ads. And you might say, would that be the end of the marketer? And actually, quite the opposite happened. Right? That we ended up with all sorts of new digital tools for managing advertising and making sure that the right ad got to the right person in the right place. So I think much of software will change. I think the CRM system of today is not the same as the CRM system of tomorrow. But I actually think the need for software is going to go dramatically up as we have more and more virtual collaborators.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your optimism. Everyone, a round of applause for Shishir.
Great job to Shishir and Wes. Give them a big hand. Wonderful.
Thank you.